It's been a bad week for former world leaders, a very bad week. Earlier today, the UK's Iraq Inquiry Committee issued its findings 7 years in the making. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair comes across as a naive leader who thought he could contain W, get him to obtain full UN authorization pre-invasion, but ultimately became, as the British press called him, Bush's poodle, a derisive nickname earned by telling President Bush, as we learned just today, things like, quote, "I'll be with you, whatever." That promise came a full 7 months before Colin Powell stood before the world describing weapons of mass destruction that weren't. And the relationship was one way, the report saying Blair overestimated his ability to influence U.S. decisions. And then popular British leader lacked a long view. Quote, "The planning and preparations for Iraq after Saddam Hussein were wholly inadequate." And most crushingly, what we now all know, there was no imminent threat. This report comes just days after the release of Gene Edward Smith's biography called Bush, which serves up another scathing indictment. The first and last sentences pretty much sum up what falls in between. The first, rarely in the history of the U.S. has the nation been so ill-served as during the presidency of George W. Bush. And the last sentence, whether George Bush was the worst president in American history will long be debated, but his decision to invade Iraq is easily the worst foreign policy decision ever made by an American president. In between, Smith never lets up, saying Bush's personalization of the war on terror, combined with his macho assertiveness as the nation's commander-in-chief, were a recipe for disaster. Today, Americans and the British, really the world, is still coping with a deadly hangover. 4,486 Americans killed in Iraq, 179 Brits, and over 165,000 innocent Iraqis dead. And the legacy, ISIS, wreaking havoc throughout the region. A terrorist group with no regard for humanity, which many believe exists in great part because of the ill-advised decisions of these same two world leaders. What do you think? Email us, tweet us, share your thoughts.